You recently shared this really in-depth piece with us, this like 7,000-word investigation. The title was something like, "Is the NBA really in trouble? A deep
This is
dive."
the one, a
You,
deep dive into the league's challenges and future prospects.
right. And what jumped out immediately, for me anyway, was this kind of contrast it sets up.
Mm.
You get this league, massive global reach, right? 1 billion fans, games shown pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, 215 countries, the article mentions, as of what, April 2025? Huge footprint.
Exactly. But then, bam, the piece pivots straight into asking some pretty tough questions about his future.
It is a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The author lays out this incredible scale, but then gets right to the core question for us. Despite all that apparent success, are these worries about the NBA's future, its sustainability, are they actually valid?
Yeah, that's what we want to dig into for you today.
That's the mission.
Because this isn't just, surface level chatter. The article flags some really significant issues right from the start. Things like viewership numbers going down.
Fewer people watching the actual games, yeah.
And then there's the string of, let's say, player controversies that have definitely grabbed headlines, maybe not in the way the league wants.
Definitely some negative press there.
Plus some very real financial pressures we need to talk about. And also the ongoing complexity around how the league handles social justice issues.
It's a tricky path to navigate.
So our goal here really is to pull out the most crucial insights from this huge analysis. We want you to understand if these challenges are maybe just a blip or if they point to something, more fundamental.
It's about sifting through the evidence the article presents. It makes a detailed case that the league's facing some serious headwinds, and we want to distill that so you can form your own informed view on where the NBA might be headed.
Okay, so let's jump in. Maybe start with where the NBA has been.
Right.
The article talks about a real golden era for viewership.
Oh, yeah. Think back, 90s, early 2000s. The Jordan era, then Kobe coming up.
Huge names, huge stars. And the finals back then. The article cites Nielsen data showing like 20 to 30 million viewers in the U.S. alone. Massive numbers.
Absolutely massive. That period really cemented the NBA, didn't it, as a cultural force dominant in U.S. sports.
But then the article hits you with the contrast.
Yeah.
That 2024 NBA Finals averaged, what was it, only 9.1 million U.S. viewers.
Yeah, just 9.1 million. It's a huge drop. It really highlights a fundamental shift, doesn't it? Fans, especially the younger ones, they're just not necessarily tuning in for the whole 3-hour game anymore.
Not like they used to.
Yeah.
And the article points out that's a 25% decrease just from 2020 when it was 12.2 million. Again, that's Nielsen data.
And it's not just the finals. That's the worrying part.
Right. Regular season viewership. Down 20% in that same 4-year window. That's according to the 2024 ESPN report.
Yeah.
That kind of consistent drop across the board, regular season and the championship. That feels significant.
It does. And what's interesting is how the article explains why. It's not just one single thing causing this.
Okay, so what are the factors?
Well, for one, there's just more competition. Other sports leagues are really prominent. The NFL, for example, averaged, 16.7 million viewers in 2024? That's way higher than the NBA's regular season.
Okay, yeah, the NFL's a powerhouse.
And think globally, too. Soccer's appeal is massive. Remember the 2022 FIFA World Cup final? 26 million U.S. viewers just on FLX Sports for that one game. The fight for eyeballs is just much, much tougher now.
It's definitely a more crowded sports market than it was in the 90s, for sure.
Yeah.
But the article, it really seems to zero in on the changing habits of younger fans, Gen Z, millennials.
Yeah, and that's critical because according to a 2023 Morning Consult survey cited in the piece, they make up something like 60% of the NBA's U.S. fan base. Huge chunk.
60%. And how they watch sports is just different.
Fundamentally different. There's this 2024 Deloitte study the article mentions, and it's pretty eye-opening. It found almost 45% of 18 to 34-year-olds watch sports highlights every day on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram.
Daily highlights. Okay.
Compare that to only 20% who are actually watching the full live games. So you see the disconnect. This preference for quick hits, short clips, stuff you get on demand.
Yeah.
It just clashes completely with the traditional, 3-hour broadcast model, mostly on cable TV.
Right. How the league is packaged versus how its key demographic wants to consume it. Okay, so besides the competition and viewing habits, the article also dives into some off-court stuff that's definitely impacted the NBA's image.
Yes, and these are the kinds of things that can really make fans tune out, unfortunately. The article brings up that 2023 suspension of a former MVP for the off-court firearm incident.
Yeah, I remember that. Big suspension. 25 games.
Right. But interestingly, a 2024 survey from The Athletic found that about 35% of fans actually felt the league mishandled the discipline. That suggests maybe a lack of confidence in how the league deals with player conduct.
So it wasn't just the incident itself, but the perception of the league's handling that caused issues for a chunk of fans.
Exactly, and it wasn't a one-off. The piece also mentions the 2022 controversy, the social media one with anti-Semitic comments from another star player.
Right. That resulted in a big fine, $500,000, and an 8-game suspension, I think.
Correct. And again, the article touches on this idea of consistency, or maybe the lack thereof. There was a 2023 Pew Research poll where 40% of fans felt the NBA wasn't consistent in how it handled these kinds of situations.
40% feeling it's inconsistent. That perception of maybe a double standard, that can be really damaging for trust, can't it?
Hugely damaging. And the article makes a direct link between these controversies and people actually stopping watching. A 2024 study from USC Annenberg found that 28% of casual fans said they stopped watching NBA games specifically because of these kinds of off-court issues, citing, a loss of respect.
Wow, 28% of casual fans. That's a direct hit to the audience numbers, which then naturally leads into the financial pressures the leagues face, and it's all connected.
It really is. Fewer eyeballs means less value for broadcasters, potentially less sponsor interest, maybe even affects ticket sales down the line.
So how does that break down financially?
Well, the NBA's money, as the article explains, comes mainly from three places. Ticket sales, those huge media rights deals, basically selling the rights to show games on TV and streaming, a massive income source, and sponsorships.
Okay, tickets, media, sponsors. Got it.
So if viewership is declining, all three of those pillars start to look a bit shaky. There's a real concern highlighted in a 2024 Sportico report about the next media deal expiring in 2025. Estimates suggest a potential revenue drop of like 15 to 20%.
15 to 20%. That's a huge chunk of potential income disappearing.
It's a significant amount of money, absolutely. And the article points out that this kind of strain tends to hit the smaller market teams the hardest.
Right, the ones without the massive TV deals like the Lakers or Knicks have locally.
Exactly. Teams like, say, the Memphis Grizzlies or the Oklahoma City Thunder. A 2024 Forbes report mentioned they've seen about a 10% drop in ticket revenue since 2021.
Ouch. And costs aren't going down, are they?
Quite the opposite. Operating costs are rising. Average player salary hit $8.5 million in 2024, according to the Players Association data. And Forbes reported overall team costs are up about 7%. So revenue potentially shrinking, costs going up.
That's the squeeze right there.
It really is. The piece gives the specific example of the New Orleans Pelicans reporting a $20 million operating loss in 2023. And what happened next? Cost cutting, staff reductions, less spending on player development, real consequences.
A $20 million loss.
Okay.
Yeah, that forces your hand. The article even mentions the possibility of team contraction, like fewer teams in the league.
It raises it as a specter, yeah. If these financial pressures become too much for some teams to bear long term, that would be a drastic step, obviously.
A huge step, something no fan wants to even think about. Okay, now, another big theme the article tackles is the NBA's, very public stance on social justice issues. That's been a major talking point.
A very major talking point. And the league does have a history here, right? Player activism goes way back. The article mentions stars like LeBron James, Chris Paul being very vocal.
And the BLM messaging in the 2020 bubble was impossible to miss.
Right. The league leaned into it. But as the article points out, this engagement hasn't landed the same way with everyone in the fan base. It's created a divide.
How so? What did the data show?
Well, a 2024 Morning Consult survey really illustrates it. It found 38% of fans felt the league actually hadn't done enough on social justice. But on the flip side, 25% felt the league had gone too far.
Wow, so significant chunks feeling opposite ways. That's a tough line to walk.
Extremely tough. And the article mentions backlash, too. Player protests, like kneeling during the anthem in 2023. A 2024 Gallup poll suggested 30% of fans actually stopped watching games because they found the league too political.
30% stopped watching over politics.
But then you have the criticism from the other side, from more progressive fans saying the league isn't doing enough, maybe just performing activism without real substance. It's incredibly complex, no easy answers.
Definitely not. Okay, so we've got declining viewership, these off-court controversies, the financial squeeze, this complex social justice landscape. The article then talks about the ripple effect, the wider consequences of all this.
Right, connecting the dots. So that financial decline we talked about. The most direct impact could be teams cutting budgets. Remember that Deloitte estimate? A potential 15% cut in spending if revenue drops 20%.
Okay, so teams have less money to spend. What does that mean practically?
Well, it directly hits the product on the court. Less money might mean less ability to attract or retain top talent, impacting the overall competitiveness of the league. There's a 538 analysis cited that suggests lower team payrolls generally correlate with a lower win percentage, maybe around 10% lower.
Less competitive games. That's not ideal for fans.
Yeah.
And what about the salary cap? You mentioned player salaries earlier.
Yeah, the salary cap, that league-wide limit on team payrolls, is tied to league revenue. So if revenue goes down significantly, the cap could too. ESPN projected it might drop from $136 million in 2024 down to maybe $115 million by 2026.
A lower cap means less money available for player contracts overall, right?
Exactly. It affects player earnings potential, future contracts, opportunities. The NBA Players Association itself reported that 60% of players are concerned about this very possibility.
So the players are definitely worried. And ultimately, this all circles back to the fans, doesn't it?
It has to. A less competitive league isn't as compelling to watch. And the potential loss of a local team, that's devastating for a fan base. The article cites a fan-sided survey where 70% of fans said they'd stop following the league entirely if their specific team folded. That shows you the depth of that local connection.
70%, that's huge loyalty. And just the general fan experience could suffer too, right? Fewer arena upgrades, maybe less investment in fan engagement.
Potentially, yes. And the article also brings up the international audience again. They make up 40% of the total fan base, according to NBA data. If the quality of the league declines or teams disappear, could that disengage those global fans too? It's a real risk.
Okay, the article really seems to flag the NBA Finals viewership specifically,
Yeah.
calling that drop a key moment. Why so significant?
Well, the finals are supposed to be the pinnacle, right? The league's showcase event. So when the 2024 finals averaged only 9.1 million viewers, down significantly from 11.6 million just the year before, that's a major red flag.
And didn't it mention something about the clinching game?
Yeah, the viewership for the final deciding game was apparently the lowest since way back in 2007. When your biggest event isn't drawing the biggest crowds, it suggests a broader issue.
And it wasn't just TV viewers tuning out.
No, social media buzz was down too. The article mentions Sprout Social tracking a big drop, like 24% fewer tweets about the finals in 2024 compared to 2023. And when they asked fans why, the reasons cited were things like a lack of excitement, maybe feeling the storylines were repetitive.
So even the championship isn't immune to this feeling of declining engagement.
It really seems to underscore that point. If the finals are struggling to hold attention, it points towards a more systemic challenge for the league's overall appeal.
So this fight for attention, it's not just the NFL or soccer the NBA is up against.
Not at all. The article makes a really strong point about the wider entertainment battle. Streaming services are enormous now. Netflix alone, 300 million global subscribers.
Everyone's got multiple streaming subscriptions these days.
Right, U.S. households average over 3, according to Statista. And look where people are spending their time. A 2024 eMarketer report says Americans spend about 4.5 hours a day on streaming and social media, compared to just 1.2 hours on live sports.
4.5 hours versus just over an hour, that's a huge difference.
It's a massive shift in leisure time allocation. And then there's the whole short-form content phenomenon. TikTok is huge, especially with younger demographics. Pew Research found 60% of 18 to 29-year-olds spend 2 or more hours daily on TikTok.
2 hours a day, just on TikTok, for many young adults.
Wow. And the NBA is on TikTok, right? They have millions of followers.
They do, about 15 million, the article says. They're trying to adapt. But the point is, those TikTok views don't seem to be translating directly into people sitting down to watch a full, live 3-hour game.
It's a different kind of engagement.
Exactly. And we can't forget gaming and esports either. That's another massive competitor for time and attention. The global esports market is worth billions. Platforms like Twitch have like 30 million daily active users.
Does the NBA have its own esports league?
Yeah, the NBA 2K League. But its viewership, while decent, is still much smaller, around 500,000 annually. The article notes compared to the audiences for major esports events like League of Legends championships, which can pull in millions.
So, competition everywhere. Other sports, streaming, social media, gaming. It's intense. Now, on the flip side, that global reach the NBA does have, that's a huge strength. But the article says it comes with its own challenges, too. Absolutely. It's both a massive opportunity and a complex puzzle. Having 40% of revenue come from international markets, having that billion-strong global fan base, That's incredible. And international stars Giannis, Doncic, SGA have definitely fueled that.
The China market, too, despite some bumps, is still significant.
Very significant, worth about $500 million in revenue in 2024, according to Bloomberg. But reaching all these global fans effectively, that's the challenge.
What kind of challenges?
Well, the obvious one is time zones. It's hard for someone in Europe or Asia to watch games live when they're played on U.S. evenings. That's a basic logistical hurdle.
Right, makes sense.
And then there are cultural sensitivities. The article mentions a YouGov survey suggesting almost half of Asian fans, for instance, might prefer less politics mixed with their sports. So the social justice stances that play out in the U.S. might not resonate the same way everywhere.
So the league needs a more nuanced global strategy.
Precisely. They're doing things, of course. International preseason games, 10 of them in 2024. NBA League Pass has 20 million global subscribers. But the key, the article suggests, is really tailoring the approach. Localized content, like the partnership with Tencent in China, which apparently boosted engagement by 15%, being mindful of different cultural viewpoints.
Okay, so after painting this picture of, frankly, quite a few significant challenges, the article does offer some potential ways forward, right? Some suggestions for how the NBA could try to navigate this.
Yes, absolutely. And this is crucial looking at the potential solutions. Can the league adapt? So for boosting viewership, the article points to things like maybe shorter game formats. The in-season tournament, for instance, seemed to get a decent bump in viewership for its final game.
Oh yeah, the tournament final did better than some regular season games, didn't it?
About 5.2 million viewers, a 30% increase over comparable windows, ESPN reported. So maybe more high-stakes, shorter events. Also, digital innovation experimenting with things like VR broadcasts. Meta did a pilot that apparently got really positive feedback. And just better, smarter social media engagement live content. Influencer partnerships.
Okay, that makes sense for viewership. What about addressing those player controversies?
The article mentions ideas like maybe a dedicated player conduct committee, aiming for more transparent and consistent discipline, plus mandatory media training for players, and crucially, more investment in mental health resources, which the Players Association is already pushing for.
Better support systems and clearer rules.
Mhm.
And for the financial side, how can they stabilize things?
Diversification seems key. Don't rely so heavily just on those U.S. media rights. The article talks about growth potential in markets like India. They saw 3 million viewers for games back in 2019, and there's a new partnership with Reliance. And the Basketball Africa League, the BAL, is generating revenue.
So expanding the pie globally. Any other financial levers?
New sponsorships, like those jersey patches you see now, apparently worth $200 million league-wide. And maybe looking at different revenue-sharing models, perhaps like the NFL uses, to help support teams in smaller markets and maintain competitive balance.
Interesting. And on the social justice front, which we know is sensitive.
The suggestion there seems to be about shifting the focus slightly, maybe more towards tangible community initiatives. NBA Cares has donated a lot over the years, and finding ways to engage fans more directly and dialogue around social issues, rather than just top-down messaging. There was a pilot program in Chicago mentioned that got good feedback.
So more community focus, more dialogue. And finally, enhancing that global experience.
Yeah, back to tailoring content. Mandarin documentaries, for example, partnering more closely with local basketball leagues around the world, and really trying to optimize game scheduling where possible to make live viewing easier for international fans.
Okay, so there are definitely ideas being floated, potential paths the league could take. Which brings us back, I guess, to the big question the article started with. Is the NBA really in trouble, or can it adapt its way out of this?
Well, as we've kind of unpacked here, the article lays out a pretty compelling argument that the challenges are real and significant. You've got changing viewer habits, these off-court image issues, serious financial pressures, the tricky cultural dynamics domestically and globally. It's a lot to juggle.
It definitely feels like a complex moment for the league. These aren't small hurdles.
They're not. But the article also implicitly points to the NBA's history, right? It's been innovative before, it has adapted, and it does lay out these potential solutions we just discussed. So for you, the listener, I think the main takeaway is just how multi-layered these challenges are. It's not one thing, it's this confluence of factors.
A combination that requires a really comprehensive strategy to tackle effectively.
Exactly. And maybe this leaves you with a final thought to chew on, something building on the article, but maybe explicitly stated. Given how fast everything is changing, entertainment, media, how we spend our time, are even these solutions enough for the long haul?
Good question.
Might the NBA need to consider even more fundamental shifts beyond tweaking formats or expanding globally to really ensure it stays relevant, not just for today's fans, but for the next generation, here and around the world? What is that core, essential appeal of live sports in this crazy, fragmented world? And how does the NBA make sure it still delivers that?
That's a really crucial question to ponder. What is that fundamental draw? Well, thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us into what's obviously a really complex and fascinating analysis. We hope this has given you a much clearer picture of the challenges and also the potential future facing the NBA today.